So here we got Vivek Ramaswamy. He's doing a Q&A. He's very pro Bitcoin and always has been. So I'm definitely interested in seeing what this guy has to say.
VIVEK Ramaswamy. Well, first of all, I'd love to get your reactions to what President Trump just said, as well as Senator Cynthia Lummis talking about having a strategic Bitcoin reserve for the United States. This is a historic moment here in Tennessee.
That's a big deal.
It is indeed a historic moment, and I am so thrilled that President Trump has become the first presidential candidate to actually have a Bitcoin platform. I think that that is so significant, and what you're going to see from those of us in the Senate once President Trump is inaugurated is a push to make certain that those of you that are involved in Bitcoin have the energy that you need, low-cost, affordable, stable energy, so that you can do your Bitcoin mining. Another thing you're going to see us do is make certain that you can self-custody, and you're going to see us get the federal government off your back, out of your blue wallets, and let you control your life and have that freedom of transaction that Bitcoin allows.
That's what we want.
So I want to make an observation about President Trump's speech, and I think it was historic, not just because he gave that speech and it's in the interests of the people in this room. That's not why he made the commitments he did. He made the commitments he did because it's in the interests of the United States of America and the values that this country was founded on, and there is a difference. I think that if our founding fathers were alive today, they would have endorsed every one of the things that Donald Trump just said on that stage. It is part of a deeper cancer in this country where you think about what is sucking the lifeblood out of the United States of America. It is the rise of this fourth branch of government. The people who were never elected to run the government, who are actually writing rules that are affecting not only every one of you, but every American. I think what you're going to get out of that second Trump term isn't there to go around and just mess around the edges of it. We want to get in there and actually shut that down. That's how you revive this country, put that regulatory state in its place. You know, one of the things that we didn't necessarily hear from today, but I want to see become part of this conversation is every time one of these administrative agencies, you know, the SEC was discussed today, pursues an action that they end up losing in federal court, they're still putting people through hell in the process.
Yeah.
You know what? If you lose, you pay. And to actually have accountability in the government for the cases they actually bring, so it's not a one-sided crusade, but there's actually accountability once and for all for the people who are actually making hell for American citizens. And I think that's where this conversation is going.
We've heard President Trump talk about how he wants America to be first. What's at stake if another country adopts Bitcoin before us?
So look, I think, go ahead, Marsha. No, you have good thoughts on that.
No, you go ahead on that, and then I'll follow up.
So look, I think that the United States of America was founded on the unapologetic pursuit of excellence. Excellence is our heritage. It is in our DNA as a country. And so what I think is at stake for the United States of America is really shame. The idea that we, through self-harm, constrained ourselves from achieving the maximum of what is possible in Bitcoin or in any other arena is, I think, a stain on our country. When we rallied behind the cry to make America great again, it was not just Donald Trump that we hungered for. It was for the unapologetic pursuit of excellence. That is who we are as Americans. That is our heritage. That is our identity. That's what's at stake in this room, right? When you say Bitcoin to the moon, you know, I know many people just want the value of their holding to go up, and that's fine.
That's me.
But I think it is a statement of a deeper point of American exceptionalism, right? We are the unbounded, the unbridled, the unafraid, the people who would not be constrained to achieve the maximum of our potential without any government or system standing in our way. That's what our founding fathers envisioned. And I think that culture, it has been domesticated, it has been tamed, it has been whipped into submission by this new culture that penalizes excellence and celebrates victimhood. While that inner animal has now leapt oceans to lift up places like China, And so, yes, when we say make America great again, what we want is to unleash that inner beast, unleash that inner animal spirit. And that's the animal spirit that I know motivates those of you in this room to achieve what you do. And that's what we're going to unleash again in January of next year.
Yes, and I think as you look at what President Trump was saying and adding on to what Vivek is saying, what we realize is that there is a new axis of evil. It is Russia, China, Iran, North Korea. And we understand and fully appreciate if America is not first in this innovation, then the innovation is going to go to whomever is first, whomever has the lowest barrier to entry.
Weird how this is finally catching on to people.
We don't want that innovation, those bright minds, to leave our shores. We want those bright
Not so
minds
much people, more
to
like
be here.
politicians.
Likewise, that also means getting the federal government out of your way. And one of the things you will see from President Donald Trump is going to be a push to work with us in the Senate and in the House to rein in the federal government, to right-size these agencies, and to make certain that we're getting rid of a lot of these unnecessary rules and regulations and bureaucrats who spend their time shuffling paper and never answering the questions that we, the people, have of those agencies, whether it's the SEC, the FDIC, the IRS. So if you're going to open doors of opportunity, it means you remove the obstacles. And I think we have certainly defined what many of those obstacles are.
The price is coming back.
Let's talk a little bit about transactional freedom. Yesterday, a lot of the people who came to the Bitcoin conference heard Edward Snowden say that America is the only advanced democracy that doesn't have a data privacy law. What are you going to do to prevent financial surveillance and really allow for transactional freedom?
Natalie, I'm so glad you brought that up, because since 2012, I have had legislation that would establish a national federal preemption on data privacy and allow you, the individual, to own what I call your virtual you, which is you and your presence online. Now, as we look at the expansion of Bitcoin and of crypto, as we look at the growth of AI, as we look at the speeds with quantum, what do we know? If you're going to have AI, if you're going to have transactional freedom, you have to have a national, federally preemptive data privacy and data security law so that you have the right to own your presence online. And you have the right to shield that from being used to train large language models. And our hope is that with Republicans in control of the Senate Commerce Committee, we will be able to pass and have President Trump sign into law a national data privacy standard.
And I should say, notice everything about Marsha's comments, these are not particularly partisan issues. Right, and you mentioned the Republicans, and that's what's going to be required in a new majority after January. But this is not a Republican or Democrat issue, and it certainly shouldn't be. Same goes for the opposition to a central bank digital currency. What was the most popular argument for the adoption of one? And this is all about surveillance, too, by the way. The most popular argument is that, hey, China's doing it, they're going to a digital yuan, and so we have to do it in the United States to keep up with the Joneses or keep up with the Jinpings or whatever the case may be. You have to step back and ask yourself why China is adopting a central bank digital currency or taking steps to adopt one, is to implement a surveillance state by force that otherwise would not have been able to be implemented without that central bank digital currency. So I do think that these should transcend partisanship. I also want to make a prediction this year about the election because of this. I think there's a good number of people across the United States of America who will not say that they're going to vote for Donald Trump or for a Republican this year, but who absolutely stand for financial freedom. They call themselves single-issue voters in crypto, and I think one of the things I've found in the tech world, crypto world, Bitcoin world is when you say you're a single issue voter, effectively that means you're voting for Trump this cycle and you don't want to just pronounce it in so many words. So my empirical prediction here is I think the polls are actually off by about at least 1%. I think whatever the polls look like, you can add 1% of it, and that's the way you're going to adjust it. If that prediction proves right this November, you can call that the Bitcoin bump or the crypto bump this November, because I do think when you look at the number of people who are actually using or adopting Bitcoin or crypto into your portfolio, who understand the assault on that by the regulatory state today, through the back door, not even through the front door, I think we now have a clear choice between the two major candidates of who's going to be the right one to get that job done. And I think it's, Natalie, I think probably for the first time in history, going to have a measurable, palpable impact on the outcome of this election relative to the polling that you now see. And so that'll be a prediction I'll make today.
Yeah, and if I can add one thing on the CBDC, this is something that as China started to push the digital yuan, when Beijing hosted the Olympics, some of us stepped forward to make certain that our U.S. athletes were shielded from that because of the surveillance that is built into that. And a CBDC leads to that social credit score. It leads to the government telling you how you can and cannot spend your money. And you know, Natalie, I think we all remember in 2022 when the Canadian government shut down the bank accounts of people that weren't willing to mask. And then you had the trucker strike, and they shut down bank accounts. The federal government ought not to be messing with your transactional life. You
Absolutely.
want that freedom.
Yeah, that event minted a lot of Bitcoiners.
Yes.
Vivek, I'm glad you brought up bipartisanship, because one thing a lot of Bitcoiners love is that Bitcoin is a neutral currency, that it is apolitical. What if some people are watching this out there in their homes in America and they see President Trump embracing Bitcoin, and now they see it as something that's going to be used as a conservative tool, that maybe they should oppose it just because the other side is embracing it? What do you say? Should Bitcoin be apolitical and bipartisan?
You tell those people
Yeah,
they're
so
retarded.
absolutely it should. In fact, this goes back to America's heritage. Alexis de Tocqueville traveled this country, over a century and a half ago. And one of the things he said is that the United States of America isn't actually supposed to last. The land is too expansive. It's too diverse in terms of the ethnic heritage of people. There's too much religious diversity. This isn't supposed to last unless there are certain, what he called intermediary institutions that are apolitical, that you preserve from the sphere of partisan politics. And that's the sports of this country, the private sector of this country, the philanthropic institutions, but I would put Bitcoin in that category as well, where once that itself becomes politicized, then that, I think, is the beginning of the end. Listen really carefully to what you heard from President Trump. I know that was not delivered off the cuff, okay? Every one of those commitments he made were well thought out, and I think if he took the trouble, believe me on this, if he took the trouble of vetting it to say that it's going to go into that speech you heard today, he really means it and stands behind it. None of that involved the weaponization of a new tool to advance conservative ends. Sure, are there going to be some people who say that, hey, the right thing to do is to co-opt these administrative agencies and use them to advance conservative ends rather than progressive goals? Maybe some people who advocate for that, and they're entitled to their view. But I think what we stand for is when we hopefully win this election and take over in January of 2025, we don't want to co-opt those three-letter agencies or the regulatory state. We just want to get in there and shut it down for everybody. Left, right, center, doesn't matter. That's how you revive the country on principle. And so, yes, do we want to keep it neutral? You're darn right. Capitalism is neutral. Capitalism is what unites us across our otherwise partisan differences. It's been politicized, I would argue, in the other direction. But the right answer there isn't to fight fire with fire. In this case, it is to fight fire with water. And
Price
that's
is
how
really
you actually
moving up now.
preserve what our founding fathers envisioned.
We're getting
in
close to 69
1776.
again.
Let's talk a little bit about the American dream. It's been lost for so many people. It's been on the decline, and for
Welcome
many
back to the Mara News Desk, powered by Bitcoin Magazine. Once
Why
again,
are
I'm
you
your host,
cutting
Pete
them
Rizzo,
off?
editor of Bitcoin Magazine. Hours ago, we watched history happen, or just an hour ago, we watched history happen when the 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump, took the stage, unveiling a slew of policy proposals. Reacting here on the desk a new power panel. To my left, David Zell of the Bitcoin Policy Institute. To his left,